Elise here. Welcome to our Sunday morning thoughts on Forever is the Soul. Today's video blog is about Chapter 2, When Spirit Calls. Andrew will be explaining his thoughts behind the subhead, When the Heartbeat Stops, a New Adventure Begins. So if you haven't already, please go to the Forever is the Soul's Facebook page and like, share, and follow to make sure that you get these videos in your newsfeed every Sunday morning. Thanks for coming along on our journey into Forever. Enjoy Chapter 2.
Welcome back. This week's thoughts are on Chapter 2, which is entitled, When Spirit Calls. When Spirit Calls. There's an implication that's somewhat different when Spirit calls in comparison to Chapter 1, which is When Death Comes. When death comes is a representation of a knowing that it's coming. In Dennis's case, he planned it. He understood that he had a degenerative disease and he chose to leave the planet. He set the whole thing up. So when death comes is a representation of that planning, that knowing. Even old age can evoke that. Where do I want to live at the end of my life? What room do I want to be in? Do I want to look at the ocean? Do I want to look at the mountains? It takes a little bit of strategy. When Spirit calls, the implication to that is completely different. It's sudden. You may not know, your ego may have no idea whatsoever that it's your day. You know, some people believe that there's a book up in the sky somewhere, and that book opens on a page, and if your name's on that page, well, that's the day you get called home. Beliefs are interesting things. You can believe whatever you want. That's the fun of belief. So when Spirit calls to me, is again, I'm playing with time a little bit here. It's about time from, again, two perspectives. If one looks at Spirit and sees that Spirit perhaps lives within a realm where the idea of what is timelessness is a much bigger concept than what we see time to be. And if Spirit has something to do with the egocentricities that we are living through as we progress through our physical lifetime, and as I said in the earlier video, if there's a duality, there's Spirit and then there's the ego, then it begs the question, especially if one goes to reincarnation, if one believes in reincarnation or can even get their heads sort of wrapped around it and go, well, okay, maybe the soul does evolve. And if it's evolving, what's it evolving from and what's it evolving to? Those are interesting questions. But if you think about the idea that when Spirit calls, Spirit is calling a part of itself home, which then begs the question is, where was Spirit before you were born? Which is, again, it gets fun there a little bit, where you start to think about it from a timeless perspective. And you start to go, okay, as I said in the earlier video, if I'm just a small aspect of myself, well, how did I get here? Is it not possible, I wonder, that from the perspective of my soul, it chose to come to the planet, it wanted to come to the planet, and it even knew what it needed to do on the planet. So it chose where I was to be born, the circumstances of my birth, the socioeconomic patterns of my birth, the religion that I would be born into, all the aspects of what my soul required in order to live out a moment of time. Again, if you stay in big picture stuff and you start to say, okay, what did Spirit want to do in the manifestation of this little physical form? What was that all about? It loaded me. It loaded me with the DNA, the genetics, the psychological predispositions to think certain ways, certain strengths within my physical structure, certain weaknesses within my physical structure. In my case, within moments of my birth, I was blinded in my right eye, silver nitrate, different story I'll tell about later. But did I plan that? And if I say, did I plan that, what part of me is saying, did I plan that? Was that me? Andrew planned to get his eye burnt at 10 minutes old? Or was it maybe my Spirit, knowing that in order for me to see as I see, I wouldn't necessarily need two eyes to see that? Or if I needed two eyes, perhaps one would be the third eye, the mystical third eye, and this left eye. So, when Spirit calls is not necessarily a reference to death. It can be a reference to an inspiration or an idea that comes into your head. In my case with Forever's the Soul, it started probably about 6 years ago, just this idea. I'd love to tell this story about reincarnation and the evolution of the soul. It just sort of stayed there. Where it came from, I don't know. Maybe I watched a lot of Joseph Campbell for a while. I really liked Joseph Campbell. Maybe something Joseph said spawned this idea about writing a book called Forever's the Soul. Don't know where it came from. The reality is it became part of my consciousness. It became part of what I would think about. And then as time, back to that magical word, sort of evolved and changed circumstances of my life, all of a sudden I had the time to write it, which is why I took the time to write it. And it makes me wonder sometimes, as much as I think I might be in control of my life, I wonder, am I in control of my life? Or was Spirit in fact calling? The subline is when the heartbeat stops, a new adventure begins. Well, that's like days of a week or months out of the year, or a new year. We celebrate New Year's with all these ideas and plans as to what we're going to do in the new year. But in fact, what are the components that lead to the decisions that we think we're making as we move from one moment, 1 hour, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year to the next? Is it an impulse that's running through us, a calling, if you will? Or is it just ego chatter? Stuff going on in our brain. Mom said I should be this. Dad said I should be this. Oh, I'm 42. I better save for my registered retirement saving plan. Should have been doing that for the last 10 years. What about Freedom 5, 55? And all these things that are just going on in our brains all the time. And so much noise often that consciousness, which I personally think is where power is. Consciousness is now. And it is, what am I doing with my consciousness right now? Am I doing what I want with my consciousness, or am I asking questions to Revenue Canada? I'm not really happy about that, but that's the now I'm living in. I'm not, but I'm just saying it could be anything. So when Spirit calls to me is a representation of, yes, life suddenly ended. Dennis had the opportunity to plan his strategy and exit as he had chosen. Some people have that luxury. Some people don't have that luxury. If it's a luxury, you want to go that way. Or you can just say that, moment to moment, did I choose to come here? Did my ego choose to come here? I doubt it. I think my soul chose to manifest the ego that I live in. And it loaded me up to be able to talk about this stuff on a video, and to write the types of books that I do, and to live in the various different places that I've lived in, and to accumulate all the wonderful fun things I have to say through almost dragging my ego, at times reluctantly, through different phases and stages of my life, because I was in resistance. But I think to begin the process of learning to tune into and listen to something within becomes at the very least, it'll become a navigator. As I said in the last video, when I was sort of framing things around a minute, and to be able to understand that 1 second leads to the last second of those 58 seconds. So you've got these 58 seconds to breathe, to look into yourself, to pontificate, to wonder. I think it's those moments when you can tune in and feel something inside. I call it spirit, you could call it light, you could call it God, you could call it a blade of grass talking to you. It doesn't matter what you call it. But if you can get to a place within yourself where you recognize how important it is to take a minute to listen, to see if Spirit's calling, or whatever metaphor you want to use, to create an image, a feeling that is bigger than your own egocentricities, and be able to pull that into your heart for a moment or two, sit on it for a moment or two, and see what's there. I used to coach at one point, and I coached a lot of different people on how do you attune to what is innate within yourself. And the commonality was that most people that I worked with in the beginning stages weren't able to differentiate between what they really felt and what they really thought. And I think once you get to a place inside where you can differentiate between the feeling of what it is to be you versus the thought of what it is to be you, you can begin to feel Spirit calling. Those are my thoughts on that. Thank you.